Before we get completely started with talking about my grandfather, I want to mention a couple of things. Number one, if you would all please refrain from comments and questions until after I finish presenting, because if we start out with questions now, we'll be here till next week. And nobody wants that. Also, some of these are for the Kavanaugh clan who is here. We're having a family reunion this weekend. So it's a gathering of the whole Kavanaugh clan that includes Laporte's. Anybody remember Laporte shoes? Okay, that's the family. And then the Toby family, my mother married Norbert Toby, and they moved to Cleveland, and that's where we grew up. So that we're the outsiders. But we love to come back to Bay City to visit. So I'm going to address the Kavanaugh clan with a couple of comments. One, number one, and don't talk out loud. As I'm presenting, you may find things that you thought were facts, and it seems wrong in the presentation. A lot of research has debunked a few of our myths.
Could you use the microphone, please?
I thought it was on.
Our microphone isn't working, unfortunately,
So this isn't happening. All right. If I'm not loud enough, start doing this or something, and I'll speak up louder. I'm a school teacher, so I can. My family usually is doing this when I'm talking. And then I would ask the Kavanaugh group to withhold your questions and comments till after the general audience has had their chance. Otherwise, you're going to be lost in Kavanaugh stuff. And then finally, especially to the Kavanaugh cousins, because most of you are regulars here, that after this presentation, well, number one, my brother Bill has a letter that I want to read to you. And number two, we have a museum to explore, especially second floor family, second floor. Look for the fish business display. Okay? All right, so we'll get started on WP. As I've mentioned, he is my grandfather. Some of you are saying, oh yeah, I know that name. I might have gone to school with somebody named Kavanaugh or something, but I noticed the Laporte shoes got a better reaction. He was my grandfather, and was also the grandfather of 21 others amongst the Kavanaugh, Laporte, Toby families. So none of us got to know him, though. My brother Norge, I think, might have been held by WP, but he's the only one. All the rest of the grandchildren started coming after he died, and he died as a result of an automobile accident, and at the age of 62 in 1932. So his career started in 1892 in his own business, but we'll get into that. So he's our grandfather. And from family stories, because our crowd likes to talk a lot, and research by my cousin Jack and his wife Donna, they did extensive research into the whole family and had file boxes full of stuff that my brother Bill and I could explore and have great fun going through. Sometimes we were puzzled, but sometimes we found real gems. It was all good. We also had my mother's memories. She lived long enough that we were finally old enough to say, we should know what that generation did. And so she could tell us the stories. And I was in a situation where I would write them down. And over years, we developed Moody's memoirs. And they are available, at least part of them, through the museum blogs. So if you are at all interested, her stories are a lot of fun and interesting, but they do go into the business as well. And also my cousin Terry Callahan, he has built a display here of the Callahan side of the family. That would be WP's wife, Helen, known to us as Nellie. So we have a big display here from him. We have handouts here. And again, Kavanaugh's, wait till the general public gets their pieces, because I can get this to my family easier than I can to the general audience. Okay, so WP was our grandfather. And what did I miss? I mentioned Terry and his research. I mentioned Jack. I mentioned Mom, family stories, and we're done with that. But we decided, my brother and I, that WP's was a real story. He did a lot in his lifetime. And the rags to riches is a real thing with him. His family moved from Ireland to Canada, and then from Canada, his mother, a widow at the age of 30 with 5 children, moved to Bay City. And we're not sure exactly why. We know that she married a gentleman named Simons, right? Yeah. And but we don't know if that's what brought her here. But we think WP arrived here probably at the age of 7. And thus went to school here up until 8th grade. All right, but I do have some questions for you. A show of hands. Raise your hand if you have any connection to the fish industry, your life or your family's life. Okay, I'm seeing some hands up here. Kavanaugh, get those hands up. So, at the age of 16, he started in the fish business, fishing from carrying fish from a basket. He was working for a wholesaler at that time. But by the age of 22, 6 years later, he was in business for himself. And he turned that business into, and I've got to read this because otherwise I'll screw up totally, a multi-port fish processing and interstate wholesale distribution business. That's pretty important. Now, are you concerned about water pollution at all? Okay, raise your hands if you are. Okay, most everybody here, the hands are up. WP took on Dow Chemical and the sugar companies, and I'll tell those stories in a little bit. Raise your hand if you own or know someone who owns waterfront property. Okay, quite a few hands going up. Well, he sued the state of Michigan for the rights of the waterfront owners. So this is why I want to tell you his story. Also, raise your hand if you like to eat fish. Okay, he made sure that his customers could get fresh, frozen, salted, and smoked fish. So he covered as much as he could every base. Did I miss one, Jack? Okay, Jack's saying, yeah, I'm fine.
Well, he was in the coal business, too.
Oh, yeah, he was in the coal, well, yeah, he was in a lot of other businesses. We'll talk about that, too. All right, I just wanted to try to get you to know that what his life is about impacts us today. Now, okay, why is this not clicking? Oh, I know why.
Okay.
It helps if I turn it on. Do you think I'm nervous?
Good job.
Not much.
Getting more nervous. Okay. Now, a little bit of his personal life, and then we'll get on to his adulthood and all. As a young lad, I think he was a pretty popular guy, made friends, and kept those friends. If he made you a friend, you were a friend for the rest of his life. And he could easily make friends, was known for being a person who liked to have a good time, but also was a very loyal person. And as you'll learn, when he believes in something, he goes after it. Here's a picture of him as a young man. There's his bride, Helen Callahan. We knew her as Nellie. And this is just before they were married. I got to tell you a little story here. WP, a young businessman, had contacts trying to reach out all over the state. also other states, because he was going interstate with his business. And he had to use the telephone a lot. Well, in those days, you didn't just pick up and dial and get someone on the phone within seconds, especially if it was out of state. It took a while for those phones to be connected. There were telephone operators. Molly and her younger sister, Nellie, were the two operators that WP ended up talking to, mainly Molly. And Molly kind of got to thinking, this Kavanaugh guy's kind of cute and kind of interesting. And she made one mistake. She introduced him to her sister. And those two were connected for life. Then, a year later, my mother came along, and the family began. And as other siblings came along, they decided that the house that they had bought was too small. So WP, a thriving young businessman, said, "We'll buy one of those houses on Center Street, one of those nice mansions. Isn't that great, Nellie?" And she said, "What? Are you kidding?" She said, "I can't be that far away from Mom." So the compromise was, some of you may recognize it, some of you may not. 242 Madison Avenue. Here's another view of it here. He had that house built, and that was a one-family home. Now, if you go to find it, you will be looking at the parking lot of Tron's funeral home. The house ended up being torn down, but it served WP and Nellie and his son and his family. And if you get talking with any of my cousins here, they'll tell you all kinds of stories about 242. And it even made the news once. A newsman looking back, a retrospective, said, 242, that was the place to go. All the kids knew, if you wanted to have a good time, 242. This was the first car he bought, and that's him in the car. And he bought it because it was durable and strong. It was a Jackson local, made in Jackson, Michigan. But do you notice it's a convertible? He wasn't too staid, I think. And then these are the four children. I'm starting at the lower left. That's young John, known as Jack. And he died in a boating accident in 1939 on the day that his son was born. And Junior, I'll tell you more about that later, kind of took him in, and Eve, because she was a widow and trying to pull her household together. And for a while, this John and my cousin John were living in the same house together.
He was known as Mike because there were too many Johns.
Okay, that was it. You all called him Mike, yeah. And I think maybe someone might say that he wasn't real thrilled with the fact that he had his name changed.
Jerry, that's your half-brother?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Jack was a great guy. Girl.
Okay. Above him is Margaret. She married Virgil Laporte, and we kids all said Uncle Bud. How we got Uncle Bud out of Virgil, I don't know, but he was Uncle Bud. Next to her is William Patrick Kavanaugh Jr., and much to his dismay, many of us nieces and nephews called him Uncle Jr. Then is my mother. She's the one at the bottom there, and she married my father, as I said, and the family got moved to Cleveland. Thus, we are the outsiders. Okay. History of Michigan. Okay. This gentleman, Charles Moore, wrote an extensive history of Michigan. It was more than 4 volumes, and they were thick. And he started the very beginnings of time in Michigan, and he went up to 1915. Now, in that book, in volume 4, he wrote biographies of the prominent men of the time. And guess who was in his book? Now, this was written in 1915, And this is quick. The whole article is in the handouts. But this is before he got involved with Dow Chemical and with the sugar companies and with the state. So he's already considered a prominent businessman, and yet some of his most outstanding accomplishments were yet to come. Now, we always thought it was a mystery as to why a boy of 16 who was peddling fish from a cart, who came from a family of leather workers, ended up running this big business, wholesale business, 6 years later. So we think that, and this was his first ad and business card. Notice he is referring to the peddling of fish from a basket being his start, to having his own operation in 1892 at the end of Sharman Street in Essexville. And that's his fishery right there, fish house there. And notice he's right next to the sugar company dock.
That today is the word stone dock.
Stone?
On the road. That's where that fish house was.
Okay.
It's word stone dock now.
Oh, it's Wirtz Stone Dock?
Stone, yeah, big stone company here.
Yeah, when we went to look at it, there was pyramids of stone. All right, the family story is he left home at the age of 14 with an 8th grade education and working as a laborer for 2 years. Now, did he work as a fisherman at that point for a while? We don't know. All we know is he went to work as a laborer. Then, at the age of 16, he began to work for George Penniman, a wholesale fish dealer located at the mouth of the river. And we think he spent the next 6 years interning and learning how to run that business. And in 1892, he had his own business, and somehow there is a conjunction with the yacht club. And in 1905, WP Fisheries expanded from the site of the old Bay City Boating and Fishing Club, which is now the Saginaw Bay Yacht Club, to build a smokehouse to provide smoked fish to customers. And the story that we have heard is that, and I think it's on the Yacht Club website, is that they were on the end of Sharman Street, apparently right next to WP's business, and that they decided that between the sugar company and some other things, they wanted to move closer to the mouth of the river. So they did, and they took a building with them on the ice that winter of 1905. They moved the building. And then WP took over what was left and started smoking fish. All right, he was in the wholesale business. Now, as I said, he wasn't a fisherman himself that we know of, nor did he come from the family of fishermen. And he was not content to run just a fish business just in Essexville. He had bigger plans than that. He saw his role as a wholesaler, a processor, and shipper of fish. Whoops, wrong dinger. He would send out his tugs to pick up the fish out at the fishing grounds from the various fishermen, paying them. I think one ad said something about a minimum of $10 a catch, and it was like so much per fish. But he would assure them of at least $10 a catch. So then he had picked up the fish from the various fishermen, leaving them nets, and he got involved with the twine company to make sure that he could provide the best nets possible. Some were new, some were actually probably repaired. Then he would take the fish to a fish house. This one happens to be up in Alpena, the one that I chose for this picture. And they would process the fish, And then they would box the fish. And if you go up to the fish display, you might see something looking like this up there, like identical. And then he would sell to fish market or to people, customers, as far west as Colorado and as far east as Boston. And this picture shows the Fulton Fish Market, which were some of his best customers. And he would work with the different people. He went to the Fulton Fish Market to work with the buyers there and make sure he was providing them with what they wanted and needed. And one time Nellie, or more than once, Nellie would go with him on some of these business trips. She kind of liked to travel too. And at the Fulton Fish Market, she noticed one time, and I've got to read this to make it correct. She would notice ladies or women down there at the fish market up to their elbows in fish-filled ice and water. However, in the evening, they would be taken out to dinner. And out at dinner, those same women showed up. They were the wives of his clients, and they were up to their elbows in diamonds. Now, he operated 5 fisheries, and as far as we know, he was the only one at that time who had that many fisheries going at once. And it was all up the side of Lake Huron here. So starting at the top, Alpena, he first started in Thunder Bay in the river. That was the fish house that you saw, and we'll see again. But then he moved his operation up to Huron Beach, and I'm trying to point out that little island. The locals that live nearby call it Kavanaugh Island. And that was my first hint that he had something going on up there. Then the next fish house was Black River. It was like a subsidiary. They'd bring it to the Black River, and from Black River, they'd either take it to Alpena or Oscoda. Oscoda, Augrey, and then Essexville, of course, is home port. And I forgot to show you all the pictures. There's the Thunder Bay. There's the Black River Fish House, the Oscoda Fish House, where his son Jack was kind of running that operation. Then the Augrey, and that's the one we don't know the exact location of. Is that correct?
Yeah, we know where it's at, but it's now so level that the only big rocks are sitting there from the fish.
Okay. Okay, so you know the spot on the river.
Pardon?
You know the spot.
It's right on the lake.
Oh, it's right out on the lake. Okay.
It's on Lake Huron.
Okay. And then, of course, home port, Essexville. And he's big on the smoked fish, notice.
That was part of the yacht club, that building. They didn't take it all up the river, and if you look at it, it's got some design to it.
Okay.
And
That's similar to the part that went
it's a fish house, but that started off as
as part of the yacht club. Okay.
part of the yacht club at one time.
All right. Okay, now, WP was, as you can imagine, an entrepreneur. He really loved to get into all kinds of things. I think today would call him ADHD. In 1905, June of 1905, there was a trolley car strike on the route from Essexville to Bay City. And that strike got rather intense, and so people ended up basically being stranded. If you lived in Bay City and worked in Essexville, how would you get there and how would you get home, and vice versa? So WP got to thinking, and probably because he was doing it himself, he decided that he would offer 2 of his tugboats to be used to ferry people between the 2 cities on the river. Yeah, imaginative. Now, he was concerned about always getting the best bang for his buck, and he realized that an ice house, something like this one, would be much more practical. So he had one built in Essexville. And Jack, did he build them anywhere else? Do you know?
No, they
There was-
had them up north because they were access to the ice very simple.
Okay.
Gray River and all that.
Yeah. So there were a couple others.
There were other ice, but not as big as the one that was.
Okay, well, this isn't his. It's a fish house I found to get the idea across.
No, that's not the one that was there, but
Right.
similar to it. It was underground
Yeah.
sawdust, and they last all year. Put ice in it, and it would, in the middle of August, it would still.
It would still be good, right. He also, and I've got to read this part because I don't want to get the name wrong in case one of this person's descendants are here. He co-owned a fish net steak patent with Edward J. Hopkins. Now, the inventor was Edward J. Hopkins. Now, I don't know, was he one of the childhood friends? And the two of them were talking back and forth, and WP was saying, you know, we're losing money because we always have to replace the fish steaks in the rivers and streams. And that's costly. And this guy may have said, well, WP, I know how to solve that problem. At any rate, this patent was here. And the idea is that in the summer, it would look like any other fish steak. Notice the water level. But when the season was over, the top part would fold down below water level so that when the ice flows came down the rivers and streams, they would go over the fish steak rather than tear it apart. So, and there's the gear and all. And this happened in 1907. And again, he's just, as I said, ADHD. If he has an idea, he goes for it. He also set up fish stores around the state. In Flint, Michigan, he had a brother-in-law, Walter Donlin, I think I've got the name right, Walter, okay, opened a fish house, and there was a Kavanaugh fisheries, or fish, not house, fish store. And that fish store is still going today. The family still operates it. So it's now called the Donlin Fish Store. They finally owned it themselves. And another thing he did was the Bank of Essexville. He and other businessmen established this bank in Essexville. I think it was the first bank in Essexville. And it is no longer there. I went to the site, and I think it's a fast food restaurant there.
Gas station and Silver's spur right across the street. So
Okay.
I remember from the bar.
You remember all the... Now, one other thing he did, and I don't have a picture, is he experimented with a rail car on the trains that would be a freshwater tank. That the rail car itself would be a freshwater tank because he wanted to send his fish so that they arrived swimming. And then they would be sold as fresh this morning. And unfortunately, according to my mother, his design was good, but cost too much at the time. So okay. Whoops, I jumped ahead of myself. He decided the fish ponds were a good idea. That way he could maybe catch the fish in the spring, keep them in the fish pond with the water properly aerated, and would then be able to deliver the fish later in the season when, well, the price was better, but it's also because that's when people still would like to get that nice fresh fish. So this is the one he built at Au Gres, and if you notice, do you see these? Those were water pipes that he had installed to make sure that the water was constantly moving so that it was fresh for the fish, and they were healthy and able to be shipped. Now, I'm taking a picture that we thought was at Au Gres, but I'm wondering if it wasn't at Essexville because I can see the concrete slabs, or the concrete, maybe I'm not saying it right.
Cinder blocks?
Cinder blocks. And he built one in Essexville. So was this a success? Oh, I got to tell you about the All Gray one. Darn. He did all of this, He worked all summer, and it was all set. He had the fish there, the water was there, everything was perfect, except the quarry was made of limestone. Now, some of you are going, yeah, I know, and others are saying, so what? Well, limestone had chemicals that leached out into the water and killed all the fish. So that was a bust. But he went ahead with Essexville. And success. Not only did the fish pond work, but he found a way to use big tanks inside the rail car to send the fish so that they arrived at the market, as the article says, still flopping. And that's part of the handouts. Now, that practice was still going in 1935, a few years after his death, maybe even longer. I don't know how long exactly, but in 1935 there was an article about the fish pond and how successful it was and how they could deliver carp to the New York market for the Jewish clientele who in that season wanted carp for their ceremonial holidays. And now, he's still being an entrepreneur, and I'm jumping time frame a little bit. In 1900, he went out to California with some friends for a vacation. And he noticed and found out about this grand opportunity. And it would be to buy plots of land for olive groves. And so he thought, hey, a good deal. I buy this plot of land, somebody else gets the olive groves going, and then I will get the benefit of the sale of the olives from my plot of land. And the more I think about it, because it didn't seem to succeed as far as being a moneymaker, does that remind you of Florida and orange groves? So same situation, apparently. He also had bought land near the mouth of the river, also near Winona Park, when it was the famous amusement park and a fabulous place to go. And he said, I've got land that I bought for fishing rights, and here it sits. And there's Winona Park. How about a summer resort cottage area? So he began to develop the land. Here's one page of his brochure advertising what he was doing. Here's another page with a sample cottage. And you see a little bit about, depending on the size of the lot, what the cost was. He had a very elaborate, I didn't want to show you every page because that would get to be too much. But Applin Beach is still there. You can go up and drive those streets. Now, the street here, of course, all the cottages and homes there are facing the lake. And this is going to be the subject that got him involved with the state. But in the upper two sections, if you drive around slowly, you might find a few of the homes that look something like, whoops, wrong thing, this. Pretty similar to the design. So some of those homes are still there intact, or kind of, and others have been extensively remodeled, you never know, or totally torn down and new ones built. But this is a community, end of Patterson Road, you can drive up there. Of course, if you all do it at once, people get nervous and call the police, but. Now, he was also an industry leader. As early as 1902, he was being reported by the newspapers as a prominent commercial fisherman. Now, I forgot to say this in the beginning. We do not have any business records. So we do not have a lot of the primary source that we need to do a real story of him because they were burnt in fires. And so they were lost to us. But the newspapers kind of made up for it. You have to remember, newspaper articles are sometimes good and sometimes not so. But basically, they told his story. And they liked to go to him because I think he was articulate. He could explain a problem, and he could nail it down and not use too many words. But I think he used them too. He was very glad to give interviews, and as the occasion arose, he would find a way to throw in a bit that would catch the ear of the general public. It was a little story here or a little something there, and the general public would pick up on it, and that ended up meaning that public opinion was swaying in a different direction, his direction. In 1908, he was the president, he was 38 years old, the president of the Michigan Commercial Fishermen's Association. And he was commissioned by Governor Warner to be a delegate representing Michigan in an international fishery congress held in Washington, D.C. Now, the fishermen were beginning to get nervous because it seemed as though a lot of laws were being passed that didn't help the fishermen. In fact, they were seemed to be anti-commercial fishermen. You know, they were restricting their businesses, and they were, worried. They had to make money, and there were laws were being set up that weren't helping them to do that. So they would be organized, and they would have meetings when a new bill would come up, and they would discuss it and decide whether they would be for this bill or against it. And in this case, they decided they were for it. But please note who was the chairman of the meeting. All right, and this little article, and I think that's part of the handouts, is WP was voted in 1921 to be one of a 7-member board of the Executive Committee of the United States Fishery Association. So to be one of 7 was a bit of an honor. Now, he got into the conservation movement mainly because, as a fisherman, he wanted to have plenty of fish. And one requirement is clean water. And another is possibly restocking the waters so that if a big haul was taken in, it would be replenished. And he was pushing for that. And this article's in the handouts. And he pushed and pushed for a fish hatchery. But as far as we know, based on many resources, including good old AI, they said, no, there was never a fish hatchery in this part of the state. No records seem to show it. But Cousin Beth Laporte found one article, and in that article, a mention was made, half a sentence, about a state fish hatchery located in Bay City State Park. Now, did this guy confuse a fish hatchery with a fish pond? Or did he really know what he was talking about? We don't know. In 1921, the different prominent fishermen, leaders of the fishing industry, began to realize that the association they already had wasn't working real well. And apparently WP agreed with that, because the new association was formed to protect the fish business from the political interference. And guess who the president was of this new association? Here's their 3 goals. Now we begin some of the cases that he was involved in. The Dow chemical plant. By 1916, the fishermen and WP, of course, were really alarmed because they would be sending out what they thought were fresh fish to their customers all over the country, and back they would come, or else the buyers would say, "What have you done? These fish can't be sold. They're unpalatable. They actually smell." And they were stunned and worried, and this seemed to be happening more and more. You know, they'd go farther out in the bay, and it still was happening to them. So in 1916, a pending hearing was announced through the papers, and WP was interviewed. And I'm going to tell you his story in just a second, but I want to point out that there were other state investigations. The fishermen were complaining and very upset, and there were prior investigations, but then there was never any results reported. No one knew what happened as a result of those investigations. So WP said, I think I can do something about that. So he went out. I'm going to show you the map of where Dow Chemical is in case you all don't know. I may be talking to the angels here. Dow was right on the Tittabawassee River, which flowed into the Saginaw River. It was a main tributary. So if anything happened on the Tittabawassee, it would influence the river and, of course, the bay. So he went up in the bay where the fish were still fresh, and he knew it, and got 24 perch. And he put the perch in 2 barrels filled with water. The one barrel was water from above the Dow plant. The other barrel was below the Dow plant. And I have a feeling you all could even tell me what's going to come up next. The barrel from below, the fish were tainted. They couldn't be eaten, they couldn't be sold. The water from above the Dow plant, the fish were just as fresh as when they were first caught and were absolutely ready for consumption. So he had, in an unscientific way, evidence, and that made the newspapers. And it's the kind of story that catches your eye. You know, if it came out, well, so-and-so from the state found that forget it. But barrels full of fish? Well, now that's the story. And that's where he would use the press to sway the public, and the public would apply pressure. So a few days later, the state representative came that was supposed to officially do an experiment, and he did come and do the experiment. And the results of that investigation was a report that said, yes, the chemicals were coming from Dow. It was obvious. And they could name the chemical. And using official tests. And it made the news. And the result then of this was where do I have that? Anyhow, was that number one, Dow wasn't the only culprit. The cities were also named for dumping garbage in the river. So the cities were told to clean up their act. All the cities that were related to this were told to clean up their act, no more dumping straight into the river. And Dow Chemical agreed that it would stop putting those chemicals in the river. Now, people today, and I don't know if my cousin is here, Cousin Beth. There you are. And tell me if I'm wrong. That the land was also affected.
Oh, yeah.
And even today, there are lawsuits going on, and Dow Chemical is trying to clean up what probably can't be.
They settled finally, but it was also covered up. The extent that the pollution was covered up by the state of Michigan at the time, as well as Dow Chemical. And, you know, finally, they were forced to settle. But that contaminated sediment is still there along the Tittabawassee and into the Saginaw River and probably part of Saginaw Bay.
Okay. Thank you. I knew you knew that straight story because you gave it to me. And my cousin Elizabeth Laporte is, I know you call yourself an educator and commentator, but you have a strong scientific background, right?
I worked with a lot of scientists over the years. Don't pretend to be a scientist, but I appreciate what they do.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Okay, 10 years later, we have another crisis. The fish are dying by the thousands. And this posed a threat to a $2 million fishing industry. So, you know, we aren't talking chump change here. This is a huge industry, and it's being threatened by somebody polluting the waters, and of all things, it's lime again that is getting in the waters and killing the fish. And there was a city commission made to try and figure out just what was wrong. Well, WP appeared at that. And not only did he identify exactly what was wrong, but he knew how and where. And he even told them how to fix it. And they followed up, and yes, he was right again. There was a dike that was compromised. And for some reason, the sugar company didn't find it, but WP did. We're down to the end here. Appleton Beach legal issue. Now, I've got a silly drawing here, but I hope it illustrates what the problem was. Because people talk riparian rights, and my brother and I were going, what are you talking about? So we kept researching and fooling around, and I thought, I'm going to draw a little sketch to make it clear in my mind. So I'm going to bore you with it. If somebody bought a cottage or built a cottage back in before 1873, when the state ordered the boundary lines to be defined, the state boundaries were to be defined. And they, of course, a whole lot of waterfront was involved. And the water line was right here, right in front of his property. And the surveyors called it a meander line. They were just saying, this is where the water line was, or is at this moment in time. And so is this then, the water line in 1915 is now way down here. Who owns this land in between? Does the state, because the original water line was here, and therefore that's the boundary? Or do the owners, because it's right in front of them? It's their property. And it became a huge debate. This was called relicted land, if you ever read some of these articles. The relicted land, that's the land exposed by receding waters over time. Who owns it? Well, by 1909, mainly the federal government and most of the other states said, the property owner. Cut and dried, that's it. But somehow the state of Michigan decided they would buck the trend, and that they said, no, it belongs to the state. Now, when they first declared that, it was kept quiet. They declared it, it's on the books, but they didn't enforce it or promulgate it in any way. And so people just assumed that, like everybody else, the land belonged to the landowners. But WP, working on that premise, remember, built the Appleton Beach area with lovely waterfront. I'm going to go through this real quickly. So he's developing this Appleton Beach home site. And then a squatter comes and builds a hut in front of his property. So he sues to evict. And that takes years and goes to the Michigan State Supreme Court. And they declared in favor of the state based on, where is it? Based on the opinion by John, I'll wing it. based on the opinion by a John Blair, Mr. John Blair. Baird, I'm sorry, Baird. Okay, I'm going shopping, I guess. He said, no, that belongs to the state, and he came up with this big elaborate argument as to it's the state's property, and the landowners do not own that far, they own up to that first meander line. And the judges bought that. Well, WTP didn't buy it. So he sued the state conservation board. John Baird was the director of it. And again, court case after court case, sometimes he won, sometimes he lost. Again, they decided in favor of the state. But meanwhile, newspapers all across the state had picked this up, and it was becoming a bigger and bigger story. And of course, landowners, be they business, private, whatever, were saying, whoa, Nellie, something's wrong here. I own that property. What do you mean the state does? And then the politicians got into it, and they were starting to say, well, we can rent that land back to you for $10 a foot. And they're going, no, I own, this many feet. You're talking too much money. What's going on? And so they started getting after the politicians. And meanwhile, some new judges were appointed to the Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court. So 1930, another party brings the issue to the Supreme Court. And I think WP probably ran out of money at that point to do it. I'm not sure, but that's a lot of legal issues going on. But another party did it, and then the new Supreme Court with new judges repudiated the other decision, citing WP's cases. And they really got after the prior two decisions and just tore them apart. But WP's vindicated. And that basically is the end of the story. But I do want to thank the people on this list. And I already pointed out how helpful Elizabeth was to me, and I'm grateful for it. And also Jill Pfeiffer, I don't know if she's still in the room. She is the one who, when I reached out, my brother and I, and said, we have some things. We've seen the fish display upstairs. We don't think you're paying enough attention to the fish industry. And she said 5 generations of her family were fishermen, so she was listening to us. And we were offering to give her a few items for the display to help build it up. And she said, oh, great, this is wonderful. And she did build it up using our resources and others, so that it's now, I think, a much better display up there of the fishing industry. And she also is the one who talked me into writing those blogs that are on the website. If you want to know the story of WP through the blogs, they're at the Historical Society website under Research Blogs. And I've been writing them since January, and this month was the last one. And the first 5 were my mom's memories, and they have a lot of fun stories in them. And she's also the one that talked me into doing this. So, Jill, thanks. And then I want to thank you all for coming. And again, general audience first. Do you have any questions?
So what happened to the business during the Depression?
I think it got through the Depression because Junior ended up running the business. His brother died, his father died. And so Junior was the one, I call him Junior. And he didn't sell the business till into the 50s.
It just went out of business. There weren't any more fish wholesale-wise.
Okay.
Didn't have the tonnage.
Didn't have the tonnage because of,
Relied on tonnage.
yeah, for wholesale, yeah. So,
Industry went out of business.
right.
I think there's only one fish company left over in Bayport.
Yeah,
All the fish companies that were left in.
That's Barrymore.
Pardon?
Barrymore Fishers, commercial fishers, Seraphim Fishery.
Now, where is that at?
They're located, they fish in like the inner and outer bay.
But Upper Peninsula area or?
No, in
No,
Saginaw.
in Saginaw Bay?
Yeah.
Okay, and they're still going? Good, because I think I saw something in the news that Bayport's worried that because of some laws or edicts from the governor that somehow was restricting what hospitals could buy and schools and I don't know what all, but somehow restricting that, and that meant that they couldn't buy from Bayport. And Bayport was counting on those customers. So the article said they're worried. But the one you know of is still going pretty well?
Yeah, Seraphim Fishery, yeah, they're an active fishery.
Good, good.
Bayport is still there, and if you,
At now.
you can buy fish directly from them.
Right.
They're,
Yeah, but their wholesale business, they said, was going down. I haven't, Elizabeth?
I think MSU Extension has been fabulous in trying to assist the commercial fishing entities that exist, but they are few and far between. And so the cooperative up in Lena and Carlson's Fisheries is still there, and I think there might be one still in the UP Kings,
Okay.
but there are very few compared to what there used to be.
I know. I mean, it's amazing. And, you know, they said pollution was one problem. They claimed overfishing was another. And the sea lamprey came in. And, you know, just a whole combination of things. And that's an industry that was really thriving. And so were the fish thriving, have all been, that's gone.
When did the sea, oh, sorry.
In the 1915 case about the relicted land,
Yes.
what happened to the squatter?
I think the 30 case probably is what finally kicked him out, or I kind of think he was a plant, myself. I think somebody wanted this to be a big case and wanted to get the state to have won. But this is a personal opinion. I have no evidence other than a hint here.
And W.P. Kavanaugh had already previously clashed over Dow Chemical Company. And Mr. Baird lost that. And so he kind of held a grudge for many, many years.
Well, again, remember, this is another member of the family. I mean, he knows his information, he's very good, but our family is a little bit on the prejudice side, you might say.
So is that law still in effect, the relict?
As of the 1930 case, the landowners own the property, amen. So the state has no claim to it.
So that law is not.
Yeah, that I don't know if it was a law, but
WP
he was over, yeah.
WP guaranteed the lakefront rights for everybody in Michigan.
Yeah, you know, with his one little bit of beachfront, but it turned out the whole state benefited.
Yeah, getting back to fisheries, there is still one going on in Pinconning. It's just east, or let's see, it's south of Newman Road and a little bit east.
Okay,
Right on the bay. And if you go down M13, which used to be US 23,
yeah,
just before
Oh.
you get to Pinconning, past the cheese place, the next corner, I don't know what the road is, but they have you can buy fresh fish there.
okay,
And if you go to Northwoods, that fish company has a freezer there with all kinds of fish, perch and walleye, and so that's still going on today.
we still have it. Are these that he mentioned the same as yours or different?
there's white, I think you're talking about White's Fishery.
Yes.
Yeah, you can purchase from them. I'm not sure if Seraphim sells through them or not, but that's a separate licensure.
Okay,
And
well,
then if you're interested in like finding a like wholesale market near you, there's a tool, Michigan Fresh Fish, where you can find and search for like your local retailer for
Okay.
commercial fishing. But there's been a lot of impacts, especially invasive species.
Yeah.
Zebra and quagga mussels really impacted and changed the food web.
okay. I knew there was another invasive species, thank you. So looks like we do have a few. Good.
Just a curious question, there are a lot of Kavanaughs in Bay City that spell their name with a C.
That's not a.
Back in the old days, are they all related, or?
Not that we know of.
Okay.
Not that we know of. Based on our research, Terry's research, the line is pretty distinct, and it's all K. So there, I mean, if you go to Ireland, you'll find Kavanaugh K, you'll find Kavanaugh C, you'll find AGH, you'll find, you know, all kinds of variations. So they aren't all necessarily the same clan.
Are they related to the Kavanaughs in Detroit that are all in politics?
No,
No.
we were never related to Jerry Kavanaugh. He was the mayor of Detroit.
Okay. Okay, no.
Guy, but I mean, we were never related.
We would have claimed him if we could, huh?
Not as no part of us.
Were there some that lived in Essexville, Kavanaughs, or none?
We have, Jennifer, are you Essexville or Bay City?
I am born and raised and live here still.
Bay City straight, okay. So, yeah, so I don't know, do you know, Jack?
What's that?
Did any of the Kavanaughs end up in Essexville,
No.
other than the fish company?
8 Kavanaughs of our generation.
Right.
And all of us totally moved out of Bay City.
Yeah.
Get a job.
Except for Jenny.
Oh, yeah, except for Denny, yeah. Yeah.
There is, however, a LaPorte that's really a Galilee that's in Essexville.
I was about to say that, and I went, wait, you're a LaPorte, I can't.
You still live there.
No.
Kate, somebody, I think, was on the edge of a question about the sea lamprey invasion.
Yeah,
Was due to the opening of the Welland Canal, which brought in all sorts of species of fish and other things from the salty areas.
okay,
And so that opened up the way of the sea lamprey. Started in 1919 and then continued in 1825. So I think that answers what was on the edge of Marty's tongue.
okay. All right, general audience, anybody else have anything they want to say, or, okay.
Marty.
He's not general audience. That's why I'm ignoring him. We'll talk later.
Okay.
Okay? All right, well then I guess that concludes, except I'd like the Kavanaugh gang to stay put for a few minutes. But thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate it. Thank you.